Hello and welcome to OmniDog's Vault. I am OmniDog and I am with my co-host Taylor Brown. Taylor, how's it going?
I'm doing great, and I'm really excited to have John Arcudi here today, famous for books like Rumble and the upcoming Two Moons. John, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, Taylor's already full of himself. He stole the introduction from me. So I can see where this is headed.
Well, Jess, you go first.
No, go ahead.
I don't know, man. I think you better take it. You may not get a chance otherwise.
Well, John, with the past year of the pandemic and everything, we've talked to writers who were like, well, my schedule's pretty much been the same in terms of my daily writing routine. Have you found that to be the same for yourself?
Largely. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of my friends are having difficulties with it. Not so much for their schedule, but just for their mental health. And I don't know what that says about my mental health, but this hasn't really changed much. You know, I don't really feel the same anxiety, and I'm sure a lot of other writers are telling you that too. I don't feel the same anxiety that a lot of people, other people are, because they're used to going out in the world and seeing other people and hugging people and stuff, and that's never been my vibe anyway. So,
a kindred spirit for me.
Yeah, I always tell Jess he's been preparing for this pandemic for 60 years.
Yeah. This is my Olympics. I am.
You're doing fine.
I don't like people, and I like staying home, and that is it. And this has been perfect for me.
It's not that I don't like people. I'm just happier when they're not around.
Okay.
It's nice knowing that they're somewhere. It's nice knowing that they're there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
like gorillas. I'm very happy that there are gorillas out there in the world. I wish them nothing but success in the world. I give to the Gorilla Foundation whenever I can, but that doesn't mean I want one here in my office with me. You know what I'm saying?
That's a great way to put it. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah. First, I guess we can go on. I wanted to get right to Rumble, but
sure.
We should. Okay, let's just get right to Rumble, and then we have other writing questions we wanted to ask you. I loved Rumble, and I don't know what made me pick it up. If I read I have the 6 trades, and I can't remember if I read a good review of it or somebody said for me to read it, but I was sort of captured by it right away because it was such a oddly unique take on I don't know if you consider it science fiction or horror or
quite the mashup. Comedy, horror, fantasy. It's kind of a bit of everything.
Yeah, I don't really. If you want to go ahead and ask the question, I can address that. But you can ask the question you're going to ask me.
Well, I don't actually have a question. I'm just telling you I love the book.
Well, thank you. I don't know. I never considered like a genre of anything that I'm writing. I just try to write a good story, and I don't know. It's an idea that I've had in my brain for a long time. I don't know if I've posted about this elsewhere and you're aware of it, but I pitched it several times to Dark Horse over the years, and several times they rejected it. And this is before James. There she is. This is before James, the animal heron, became involved. And he was the guy. There wasn't going to be another artist that was going to make it work. I mean, without James, it never would have been born, I don't think, because he brought so much to it. He brought so much more to it than I think people understand from reading it. He's a real smart guy. He's a hell of a colorist. He got to color his covers, fortunately, but he never got to color anything else because it was going to slow him down. But he really understands color really well, and he draws like a motherfucker. He really understands storytelling better than a lot of people who I'd worked with, because I worked with him when he was fairly young. on a couple of BPRD stories. Well, an Abe story and a BPRD story. I mean, he was like 23 or something, some fucking outrageously young age. You know,
I'm 30 and now I feel bad.
Look how bad I feel.
Well, he's older now. You know.
What's the process? I think that every artist and writer have a different process. What was it like between the two of you, as far as you giving him script and ideas and stuff, or would he take your ideas and take them even further than you thought could be done? Did he not only did he bring him to life, but did he take the book places you were surprised at?
Well, he absolutely took the book places that beyond what I would have asked any other artist. You know what I mean? Not to say that other artists aren't capable of doing, you know, but he's capable of doing what he does, you know, basically. But the working relationship started when we became friends, because I reached out to him. I don't know how I became aware of his stuff, but I reached out to him and I was like, this stuff's amazing. Why isn't this guy working everywhere? And I introduced him to the editors up at Dark Horse. And I can say it now because, you know, nobody really cares much about that particular editor. It's great resistance to using James Herron. And I was like, are you fucking blind?
Do you mind if I show some of the art on my screen here?
By all means. I keep talking about the guy. They should know what I'm talking about. There was great resistance from that editor. I really had to push James on them or on him, I should say. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. I'm just not going to use his name. Okay. He's not in comics anymore. He's had his troubles, let's say. Yeah, it was great resistance from him. Even after we did the Abe Sapien book, there was still great resistance from him until people responded positively, and then he immediately wanted to work with James. That's how it always goes. But anyway, we became friends, and James lived not too far away from me when I lived on the East Coast. I think he was up in Boston, but his family was in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philly. And he would come down, and we would grab lunch by the 30th Street station, which was a train station, at this bar called Slantja, which is how we got the dog, Slanja. That's one of the ways, like just hanging around James, these ideas would come to me. I got to say something else about James. Well, let's talk about Rumble first. But we talked and talked and talked, and I gave him the original pitch. So he did some creator designs. I'm sorry, creator design. Obviously, he owns the stuff. Don't get me wrong, but character designs. And I saw stuff after I saw his character designs that I would not have otherwise seen. So then I wrote up the first script for him, and again, he brought all the fucking noise you would want to that first script. He made it. It was different from what he did on BPRD. I felt like there was, maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like there was a little more freedom in his art than what we saw on BPRD, which is saying something because his art on BPRD is phenomenal. And so every time you're muting because the dog is barking, right?
Yeah, my wife's giving my son a bath and my dog is barking, so I thought.
Okay, now dogs don't like that, man. So with each, and I experienced the same sort of thing with Doug Monkey. With each new script, I saw what he could do, and I tried to make the script. I tried to make it more challenging, which of course I'm sure James hated, as I'm sure Doug did. But every time he met the challenge, and so he's the only one to blame for that. But in a larger sense, the way I worked with James was after we did The Devil Does Not Jest on Abe Sapien miniseries, I wanted to do another series with him, an arc on BPRD. And, as I said, I had to struggle to get him to do that. But the way it all began was, and this was The Long Death, one of the best arcs I've ever written, and that's due in large part to James. It's a 3-parter, and it's still. I mean, I think about it a lot, and it deals with Johann, and it all came about. Literally, all came about. I was thinking of finding a way to killing Daimyo, and ending the whole Daimyo, Daryl, the Wendigo partnership, and getting rid of Daryl, getting rid of all of them. Because I thought, if I'm going to leave BPRD, I don't want anybody else to fuck with my characters. That's really a selfish way of looking at things, but that's how I do every time. If you've seen, like on Doom Patrol, I killed a character when I left it that I knew no one else was going to use anyway, but I wanted to make sure, and I killed him. So I do this all the time. I was like, it was in my head, and I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And then I was looking through one of James's sketchbooks. That's the word. And there was this image of Johann, except the bubble head was filled with this goo, and there was this big eye looking out. And maybe there was teeth and stuff too. And I was like, holy shit. So I absolutely had to get that into a comic. And since I wanted to do a Johann-based story anyway, that was the comic. And that's how it all opened up, with Johann dreaming, which he'd never done, but he hadn't done since he died. And so it allowed me an opportunity, both of us, James and me, an opportunity to expand upon the characters' psychological landscape before we move forward with his mission of revenge. So his fruitless mission of revenge.
Man,
love that story.
I might have to bust out my BPRDs and do a reread of these.
Well, I mean, I don't know. A lot of people love it. A lot of people just, it's another arc. I don't know. It doesn't, but I'm really happy with it. And I know James is happy with it. I told him, if you sell any pages from that BPRD art, you contact me first. I don't have any money, but you still contact me first. And he, as far as I know, unless he snuck it behind my back, he hasn't sold any pages from that arc. He sold lots of other pages, but he hasn't sold any pages from that arc, which suggests to me that he feels as strongly about it as I do.
So he did the first 15 issues of Rumble, and the final 15 were David Rubin.
He's from Spain, so it's pronounced David Rubin.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So he finished out the run. So how was that transfer for you, going from a different artist, going from James to him?
I have to say this up front. I have to say this up, especially after everything I've said about James, right? I have to say this up front. This is no reflection on David. This is a reflection on John. I never should have done that. It's James's book. It's now James's again. I never should have done that. I really was having a lot of fun. James wanted to do something else. Obviously, I was disappointed. I wasn't mad. He's going to do what he's going to do. You know, that's fine. I want him to be happy. And by the way, the book he's working on, I don't know if it's been announced yet, so I can't name it. Coming out from Skybound is, God, stunning. It's big time. I shouldn't have done that. But there's a lot of story I wanted.
Done that. What do you mean you shouldn't have done that?
I shouldn't have given it to another artist. It's James's. It's James's and mine. It's not anybody else's.
Okay.
And I can't believe at this late stage in my career I made that mistake. But I really was having a lot of fun. I wanted to do more. And James was like, go ahead, do more. I wish he had said no. But I can't put it on him. Can't put it on him. It's on me.
So you wish
That
he'd wrapped
said-
it up whenever he wanted to leave, basically.
Yeah. Well, if he wanted to come back, we would do more stories. You know?
Okay.
And if he didn't, we wouldn't. But that said, that's just, you know, and I don't mean to discourage anybody from picking up those trades. I just want everybody to know that that's not how I look at James. You know, I look at James as a co-creator, as a collaborator. I don't look at him as a wrist. And I never have, in spite of all of this. But that said, David's an incredible artist, and especially those first 5 issues. Good God, man, he killed. It was a very different working relationship because he lives in Spain and we couldn't hang out. And I was still living on the East Coast. You know, if I were going to continue to work with James, it would have been great because he moved a little closer to Philadelphia. But he did a great job. But it was a more, I had to put more detail into the scripts because A, English is not David's first language, and B, we couldn't talk on the phone really. You know, James and I could talk on the phone. We could talk on FaceTime, and especially when I moved out here, there's no way I could set it up because David's 9 hours ahead of me now that I'm on the West Coast. It was just a pain in the ass even to set it up on FaceTime, and so I had to be more precise. But that said, I think that David killed. I mean, he's a tremendous artist. His book, The Hero, that Dark Horse published in translation, which he also wrote. He wrote himself. Is a stunning book. It's just great. So I was really, really, really happy to work with him, in spite of what I'm saying now. It was only in retrospect that I called up James and said, look, I'm sorry about this. We're going to get you the rights back and stuff. Yada, you know.
I'm not sure I understand it, because if he decided to, did James decide he wanted to move on after the first 15 issues?
Yes.
The story wasn't finished at that point. So what other choice did you have?
It's not finished. It's not finished now. No, I didn't. I mean, of course I had a choice. It's James's book, you know? I mean, I'm very careful about the people that I work with on creator-owned projects for the most part. And after we wrapped up what we did on Rumble, for the next 17 issues that we did, I made sure that James got a chance to close out the series with his 8-pager that was linked to Andrew McLean's 8-pager, the Headlopper Rumble crossover. See, I can't, working with David, you know, I couldn't work with him without letting him be, you know, own the trademark on the property. So what I had to do is take the trademark away from James and of course include him on any back-end profits should we, you know, license the property or it be picked up for a TV show, movie, whatever, right? But that seems wrong to me. And David was really very, very cool and very kind afterwards. I said, I'm gonna return the trademark to James, retain copyright on all the artwork you did. You'll retain all profits on all the, you know, books that were published that you did the art for. But James needs to get the trademark back. He needs to have ownership of the property again. That's the problem. It's not as if I own the trademark and I can dispense it to whoever I want. James was the original co-owner of the trademark. So that's why I really felt like I made a mistake. But there were so many fun things I got to do with those other 15 issues. And I even got to do the variant covers that African-American artists did in tribute to African-American artists in comics. And I was really committed to doing that. I was really happy I got a chance to do that. And I got to talk to and work with Arvell Jones, Ron Wilson, Keith Pollard, 3 of my heroes in terms of comics of the 70s and 80s, and Chris Bruner, who's awesome, and Sanford Green, who did tributes to A.C. Hollingsworth, and that was Sanford Green's, and Matt Baker, that was Chris Bruner's, 2 pioneer African-American artists in comics. So these were opportunities I couldn't have gotten if I stopped doing it when James wanted to stop doing it. And so I'm glad I did those things. I feel like I owe James, and I've given it to him, an apology. So I'm really, 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 really focused on creators getting what they're due and what they're worth, being one myself. So.
Well, the good thing is you said that there wasn't really an ending for the second arc, so you guys could still return with James Herron at some point.
Sure, if James wants to, absolutely. I've already got the last arc in mind if he wants to do it. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. So there are more stories coming because I loved the sort of not only the world building of these of the gods and all the various factions that were involved, but there was a lot of dry humor in it that I really loved, and that's what really sort of hooked me into it. Was not only was it an unusual premise, of a god inheriting the body of a scarecrow trying to get his body back, but well, right off the bat, that's funny to me that there's a god inheriting the body of a scarecrow. But there was so much good dry humor, and the characters, like especially when now I'm blanking on his name, the fire guy,
Nusku.
yeah, whenever he gets his fire put out, he's like this little teeny little dude, and the character design on that is hilarious.
Yeah,
I just enjoyed the humor, the written humor, and then the things to laugh at about the little teeny characters and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I always like one of the best comics out there, The Goon. It doesn't really, like, you know, by the great Eric Powell, it doesn't really bother with trying to define itself by a genre. It just is what it is. And, you know, on one page, you can laugh and be horrified and be heartbroken. And so I was like, yeah, that's what I've always wanted to do. And so, you know, not that I didn't get opportunities to do that on BPRD, but I really felt like there's a lot of funny things in life that are sometimes really, really sad, you know? And so when Nusku gets turned into this little, you know, little thing, he's funny. But then when Bobby kills him, Bobby's broken up about it.
Yeah.
You know? And I didn't want, like in comic books and movies and TV shows, like these people get immersed into these absolutely fucking insane situations and they immediately adapt. And I fucking hate that. And I wanted Bobby to felt like he had to kill this guy, but to feel busted up about it. I thought that was really, really important. You know, I didn't want him to kill this guy and say, I saved a fucking day. You know, Dell he's a lunatic. But even Rathrak, you know, the Scarecrow Warrior guy, even Rathrak understands why he feels the way he feels, you know? And I thought that was an important thing to show. And I felt like I couldn't continue to write Bobby as a character that I wanted to write if he didn't feel like someone who I, you know, could believe was real, you know?
I definitely feel that whenever I was watching the original Star Wars movie recently, and whenever Alderaan gets destroyed, Princess Leia's upset for like 30 seconds, and then she never really seems to care again after that. So it is great to see some stakes, some personal stakes, whenever someone has to kill someone, or if they experience a devastating loss. It actually lasts longer than an issue or an arc. It lasts for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and Princess Leia, like, I mean, whatever with the Star Wars movies, it's not my thing. But yeah, like everyone you know, everyone you ever knew, everyone you ever will know, and your home are gone, you would fucking go into a deep depression, man. You know? I mean, that doesn't make for a good movie. It's just, you know, it's just a space opera. But yeah, it doesn't work for me. It never works for me.
Well, it helped, I think, the reader to connect to the character, because it was something that you don't always see, and he carried it with him for a long time, and that was part of his character development, and that's something that helped me to not identify with him, but I think it's a good sign of writing when you can care about a character because you see him develop before your eyes, and I thought that was character development that he was, you know, and he carried it for a long time throughout the book. And I would too if I had to kill somebody.
Yeah, even if he was a bad guy. I mean, you know, like a lot of cop shows, these guys they shoot somebody and they're right back next week shooting somebody else. But in real life, these guys, you know, they go through shit. You know, they go through shit. Even if it's someone they know they had to kill, they go through shit. You know, I mean, well, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get into a political discussion. But there are lots of cops, let's put it that way, who go through shit after they kill somebody.
Yeah, that seems only natural.
And, you know, people in combat. I mean, forget about the you know, the larger geopolitical stakes. Some guy's trying to kill you and you shoot that guy. You have to. You have no choice just because of the situation. That doesn't mean you don't go through shit.
Yeah, and the way that Bobby had to kill Nishu wasn't exactly the most clean of deaths either. Chopping him.
No, well, it's the only thing he had that he knew could hurt Nusku. You know,
man, another great example of how great James Heron is. That
oh my God, that fucking scene, Jesus!
You see his, but yeah, the body kind of in half and all the organs and everything. That's a good example of how great he is as an artist.
James, and he cuts the eye in half, which James loves to do. James absolutely loves that.
Well, that's the fun thing about the series is that you can have the funny, humorous moment of that monster being chopped in half, but there are those horrific stakes. There's humor in those, you know, the act of this killing you have to do.
Yeah, I mean, like Dawn of the Dead, you know, is a great. The original is a great movie in the sense that it's potent, but it's also at some point the gore becomes slapstick and funny. You know, I don't know if you've seen the original Dawn of the Dead, but if not, I highly recommend it. If you have, I'll talk about a scene. If you haven't, I won't spoil it for you.
Well, Night of the Dead was filmed really close to me in Pittsburgh, so I've seen that one, but I haven't seen the original Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, you see Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead? I should hope so. That's a perfect movie. Night of the Living Dead is a perfect movie. There's nothing wrong with it. And you're in Pittsburgh now?
Yeah, I'm in Pittsburgh now. So as a Pittsburgher, you have to watch all the movies that are made in Pittsburgh. So that's one of them.
Martin, you gotta watch Martin. Have you seen Martin?
I guess I haven't seen everything then. So
that's another George Romero movie, and Dawn of the Dead is filmed in Pittsburgh, actually right outside of Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Okay.
The original by Romero, Dawn of the Dead, is filmed right outside of Pittsburgh. Yeah, you got to see Martin. Martin's really great. Another George Romero movie, but I'm a big Pittsburgh fan. Love the Pirates.
Yeah, well, Steelers didn't exactly do really great on Sunday.
Go Bucks! Go Bucks! I love the Pirates. I love that stadium. Clemente's a huge idol of mine. Stargell. Yeah.
You're talking to me now. Taylor has no idea what you're talking about.
Come on, Jess. I'm not the biggest sports fan, but I know about sports, Jess. I've been to PNC Park many times. Unfortunately, we haven't been as worthy of the stadium in previous years as we should be.
No, but the Bucks have a storied history, and be all that as it may, what an amazing stadium! I love that stadium. I love it. I saw Griffey Jr. hit a home run into the river out of that stadium. I love that stadium, man.
It's the best view of the city, so it's a great,
absolutely. Which is another. It's a beautiful city, which wasn't always the case, but it's a beautiful city now. I love that city.
See, Jess, you should come and visit me up here. It's beautiful.
Absolutely, dude.
If I could leave my house, I would.
Absolutely. Pittsburgh is an amazing town. It's gorgeous. You know, it's still, I don't know if it still does, but when I used to visit it, it still carried the stigma of being a steel town, you know, lots of soot in the air. And that's not the case anymore. It's a gorgeous city, very, very low violent crime rates. I love it.
Well, yeah, I'm due to go to Pittsburgh and hit every comic book shop there with Taylor eventually. Maybe it's going to be 2025, but I don't know.
Well, you got to hit the ballpark then too if you're there. I mean, you have to, dude. You know, watch people come back and forth over Roberto Clemente Bridge while you're sitting behind. If you can get behind home plate, it's just, oh, dude.
Well, Taylor,
we'll do the full tour. We'll do the full tour for sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, he was supposed to visit me this year, and then everything fell apart.
Yes.
So on top of Rumble, you've written a lot of stuff. I know you've written a couple crime stories like Creep and Dead Inside, which I greatly enjoyed. Do you see yourself even going back to those titles? Because
absolutely, I've got a sequel to Dead Inside in mind, and I've got another. I don't really think of it as a sequel. I feel like every Creep story is it's itself. But yeah, I'd love to do more Creep stuff. Creep is one of those weird situations where I own the trademark, because of the circumstances under which it was created. And so, I have to hire a writer on a work for hire basis, which really sucks. I don't like to do that. But nevertheless, it gives me a little more freedom to do it when I want to. And I'd love to work with Tony Fesciulla on, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, on Dead Inside again. I wouldn't do it with anybody else, obviously. It's, I really enjoyed doing that series. Got me a chance to have, along with Bobby LaRosa, an Italian-American, protagonist, a hero. And that's really important to me because of the ways that Italian Americans are depicted in media, in all media. So that was a really great opportunity to do that. So
if you did more Creep, since you have the trademark, would you try to do it at Image then?
If they wanted to do it and I could find an artist that wanted to do it, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Creep is basically a private investigation story. I love PIs. It's my favorite kind of crime story. And the main character has a condition. Can you remind me what it's called?
Acromegaly.
Right. And so he pretty much becomes more, his facial features and his whole body grows, and it changes throughout the book, and it changes throughout his life, and everyone kind of views him in a really negative light whenever they see him. And he kind of has a hard time doing his job because as a PI, you want to blend in, but he stands out.
Right. But as he discusses, people, they dismiss him because he looks to them like some kind of moron, like he must be suffering from some sort of mental disability because of his apparent physical disability. So, he can't blend in, but he can get dismissed. People talk in front of him, people talk to him thinking maybe, this is his perception of it, I should say, thinking that he really isn't taking it in, so they trust him, more. He's a great character to write, and I get to visit 1980s New York. I lived there in the 80s, and I get to revisit it because it's still very present in my memory, and I can still write about it with some degree of expertise. It's a lot of fun.
Well, that was such a unique spin on the genre because whenever you watch PI movies or detective movies and shows, they're always the most handsome actor imaginable. Even in Philip Marlowe stories, Sam Spade, they're depicted as these really gorgeous guys.
Well, except for Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart's a monkey.
Well,
of course, Humphrey Bogart has a mystique, but he's not really good looking.
I think he was considered handsome in his day, though, as a leading man.
Well, yeah, not originally, but when he became a leading man, Lauren Bacall fell for him, for Christ's sake. So,
yeah, Lauren Bacall.
Yikes.
Yeah.
My God.
Wow.
One of the most beautiful women who's ever walked this earth fell for Humphrey Bogart. So clearly my idea of what is handsome is way off mark, man.
One of my favorite pair-ups in movies is Rear Window, Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. And you see him getting his massage, and you're like, this is like a really old dude who's acting like a 25-year-old. And it's just funny how leading men were just so different back then.
Well, he's bankable. That's, what it has to do with. He was bankable in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He's playing a guy fresh out of law school, and he's like 60. But John Wayne and is it who is it? Vera Allen? No, who is it? It's Vera Miles, right? In Liberty Valance.
Yeah,
she's really young, and they're both vying for her, and she's like, I'm like, sweetheart. I know it's a small town, but come on, But you got these two guys who are nearly 60, one fresh out of law school, supposedly, and one is, handsome, because John Wayne was handsome even when he was older. Supposed to be this young, handsome guy. It just doesn't work. That said, it's an incredible movie. I love John Ford, and he rarely missteps except in the casting. But again, they were bankable. They were bankable actors. So.
What's like high school movies nowadays where all the kids in school are like 29 years old or like 40 years old?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for me to watch these movies about kids, except Euphoria, which is, Jesus, that's amazing. But most high school TV shows or movies, the kids act like they're 25. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mind you being 25, but shouldn't you be acted like, there's so much drama. I went to high school. I'm guessing you guys went to high school. A lot of shit went down, and there's real stories to be told there, especially in the way that the kids react. And, Yeah, it's a little problematic, but I think that all started with Dawson's Creek, right?
I will never be as cool as the high school kids in that show, and I never knew anybody as cool as the kids in any of these teenage shows. My high school, I was a dork in high school, and I had dorky friends, and I don't remember anybody being as cool and casual as 90210 or any of these guys.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like I said, Euphoria is the closest to my high school experience. Not really that close. Don't get me wrong, but we didn't have somebody who was blackmailing, adults and stuff. But as far as I know, but still, it was otherwise as close to my high school experience as anything else I've ever seen. Yeah, so I don't think most shows are making any effort to reflect that at all. And that's okay. I mean, AP Bio doesn't really reflect, I think, anybody's high school experience, but it's hilarious. So why not? I'll accept anything for comedy, literally anything.
Yeah.
All right, so your newest creator-owned series is coming out.
Actually, guys, you can edit this, right? You're taping this now, but you can edit this?
No,
Okay.
I don't do any editing.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I can't dodge out for a second here, huh?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Taylor and I'll talk about something.
Okay. Yeah, because I do want to talk about Two Moons, but I can dodge out just for a second. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Well, going off of high school movies, Jess, like what was like your favorite high school movie growing up? Or I guess as you were like I guess the 80s was kind of like the heyday of high school movies.
Yeah, Fast Times at Ridgemont High was the ultimate high school movie for me.
Did you watch? They did like a table reading of that via Zoom with a bunch of different actors, like from today.
Oh, really?
It was really, yeah. And Shia LaBeouf was Sean Penn's character. Remember what his name was?
Oh,
he was like the stoner surfer.
Yeah, that was. I think
something weird. I can't remember.
That was Sean Penn's greatest role.
But Shia LaBeouf was like legitimately smoking weed while he was reading the parts. It was like I think it's a little bit too close to life, but it was interesting though. But yeah, that's a good one. Breakfast Club's obviously a classic.
Yeah, I hated that movie. I wasn't a big fan of any John Hughes movies, really. You
didn't like Ferris Bueller?
Okay, yeah, I like that.
Oh man,
keep going.
Quite the controversy. Home Alone.
It was okay.
Uncle Buck.
Was that with
John Candy?
Yeah, I love that movie. That was a John Hughes movie?
Yeah, he wrote that. I don't know if he directed it, but he wrote it.
Oh, I love that movie.
There you go.
Okay.
I've never seen 16 Candles. I haven't seen all of his movies. I've never seen 16 Candles.
I take it back. 16 Candles. I take it back. I don't know what I'm talking about. 16 Candles is a great movie. Oh, I love that movie.
And Weird Science, that's another one, I think.
Yeah, I'm sort of lukewarm on that, but 16 Candles, that is a great movie.
Yeah, that's one of more your controversial statements in the past, Jess, is you don't like John Hughes. But apparently you do.
Yeah, I guess I do. I just don't like some of his films. I didn't like Pretty in Pink.
I never saw that one either.
Yeah, you don't need to. What are some of his other films?
Well, I was talking about Ferris Bueller. You don't like Ferris Bueller, though?
No, I do.
Okay, so you only just like two of them. That's pretty much it.
I know there's more. Well, I didn't like Breakfast Club. I didn't like Pretty in Pink.
Okay.
Hey, we're just talking about
movies.
John Hughes movies. Based off the high school movies you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty well. I mean, people love them and they're sort of iconic, but yeah, no thanks.
Well, I loved Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, wait a minute, is that John Hughes?
No, we were talking about high school movies, and it went towards John Hughes because he kind of dominated that market in the 80s.
Yeah. But Fast Times at Ridgemont High, that's another movie that's closer to my high school experience than anything else I've seen. So
Spicoli,
that's what it was. I thought it was Pekulski.
Oh, we lost him. Okay.
Hopefully he can jump back on.
I wonder if he knows he's not on. Oh, okay. Here he is.
Um,
Okay, you're back.
okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what
Oh, you're
happened.
good. Well, now that you're back, let's talk about Two Moons. Your
Yes,
newest
please.
work, I think it comes out in February, correct?
Right. I don't know the date, but yeah, February something. I think February 24th. Actually, I think.
So what can you tell us about the series, how you created it, how you came up with the idea?
Well, I've gravitated towards. I love westerns for one reason and one reason only. I like horses, and so I'll watch almost any western because I'm almost guaranteed to see a horse. Really, I grew up around horses, and when I was very young, I should say, I didn't grow up around them. When I was very young, I worked on a ranch when I was a teenager. But the problem there, of course, is that Native Americans are frequently, especially in older westerns, depicted in a one-dimensional fashion, basically as the bad guys. So when I was a teenager, I started to gravitate towards stories about Native Americans. And I lived on the East Coast. My initial interest was in the Six Nations, but because I loved horses so much, I very quickly started to pay attention to Plains Indians, especially, and some West Coast Indians. So every opportunity I get, I tell a story, if I can, in comics about a Native American. I did this in Witchfinder, I think it was called, for Dark Horse. It sort of the Paiute Indians played a more tangential role in the story, but it was playing with some of the stuff that was happening in 1890 in Utah and Nevada. So every chance I get, I tell a story like that, and I've been wanting to tell a story about the Pawnee, because at the time they're on a reservation in Oklahoma now, but at the time they were in Kansas, and I wanted to tell a story about Kansas, but from the perspective of a Pawnee Native American. And I originally wrote this up for another publisher, and they never got back to me. They just ghosted me, and so I turned it into something. It was going to be a mini series, and so I turned it into something that had a much larger scope, so that we could learn more about the character of Virgil Morris, the protagonist, who's a Pawnee, whose birth name was Two Moons, but his parents and a lot of other people in his specific band died of a fever. So he is raised by a schoolmaster and his wife, and their last name is Morris, and they name him Virgil Morris. So he enters into the Union Army fighting in the Civil War, and that's where we pick him up. And my hope with this series is to chart the changing attitudes towards Native Americans, in this case specifically a Pawnee, throughout the second half of the 19th century. Because if they were going to fight for the Union or the Confederacy, hey, you're white, come on in, you know? And then quickly thereafter, Native Americans got marginalized, worse than marginalized, got targeted once again. And the Long Death is what a lot of Native Americans called, which is, I stole that title for that BPRD thing I did with James Herron. The Long Death is what a lot of Native Americans called that period after the Civil War, where they were picking off bison, robbing, especially the Plains Indians, of their food sources, because to a large degree, Native Americans on the, and I use Indians, and I don't mean to insult or offend anybody, because I have a Native American friend who insists on being called an American Indian, because he says, John, you're a Native American. I don't know what to do. I'm trying not to offend anybody because it's a problem, but be that as it may. The Native Americans on the East Coast have been largely subdued or absorbed into the culture. And so the Plains Native Americans and the Native Americans of the West were, especially the Apache, the Cheyenne and the Sioux, they were still putting up a hell of a fight. So they started killing off all those bison, so they didn't have a food source. and it made it a lot easier to control them and kill them. So I wanted to chart that change of attitude towards the Native Americans. Hey, if you're fighting with me, it's all good, but if you're not fighting with me, you're a goddamn redskin, So that's the hope of Two Moons. Let's see how successful I am at it.
Well, Jess, you can pull up some of the art if you have it, right?
Yeah.
Screen share it.
If I show some of the art?
Please.
Okay. Let me see if I can do it.
And how much research did you have to do into the Civil War? Because like the dialogue, we read the first issue that you sent us. It felt so. I didn't live back in the 1860s, so I can't say I was there. But it seems so true to life for that era. So what kind of research did you do for that era?
I've been interested in the Civil War since I was very young. And so it's basically the research I've been doing. Now, on the Pawnee, I actually had to do more research. I know more about Ojibwe, Oglala, and Cheyenne than I know anything about the Pawnee. But I wanted to write about Kansas, and so I decided to pick the Pawnee. I could have gone with the Osage, but whatever. I did the Pawnee. Give me a break here. So the Civil War I actually had been researching for a long, long time. So I still wanted to get the dialogue as authentic as I could. So I have this great book. What's it called? The Last Full Measure. And I don't remember the author, but it's a collection of letters from writers from both the Confederacy and the Union. And it is invaluable if you want to try to capture dialogue for anything you're working on. It's an amazing book because it's great for research for, jerk-offs like me, but it gives you a picture of what it was like for these men and what they really felt and what they really believed and what they really thought they were fighting for. So yeah, I've been researching it all my life, but I did a deeper dive on dialogue for this specific series. And the next challenge is going to be post-Civil War and making sure I get that dialogue as authentic sounding, if not actually authentic, as I can possibly make it.
Now there's a horror element to this book too, right?
There is. There's a mystical, as I said, I have a great deal of difficulty sort of pinning down genres for what I'm writing because that doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, there's a horror element to it that is tied into the mystical origins of Virgil Two Moons Morris's lineage.
And who's the artist on this title?
I should have said that first. I hope Valerio doesn't hear this. An Italian artist named Valerio Giordano. Look at that page. Look at him. Look at that. That's Two Moons' grandfather. Yeah, scroll up a little so they can see the last panel. Those panels 3 and 5. Oh my God. Absolutely stunning.
Can you remind us of other books he's written, other books he's drawn? Because I can't think of anything else.
Valerio he's an Italian artist, and as so far as I know, he hasn't done interiors on any American comics. He's done largely Italian comics, and they're all gorgeous, obviously. But he's been doing a lot of covers for Marvel recently, a lot of variant covers, and again, they're just knockout beautiful. Some of them are just, man. So
the art here is gorgeous.
Oh yeah, and Dave Stewart colored this first issue, so let's not forget Dave. The amazing,
pretty much like the best colorist in comics, pretty much.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very, very lucky to get to. He couldn't continue. Maybe I shouldn't say anything else. Yeah, this first issue is just. I mean, like I am the weak link in this first issue.
I was really impressed with the art. He seems like a mixture between like Mike Deodato and Mikel Janin from DC. Like he has a really interesting, realistic style that I was really impressed by.
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean, look at that panel right there with the wagon. My God, like that is the easiest panel in the world just to blow off. And a lot of artists, especially back in the day, a lot of artists are just, it's a wagon. I'm not even going to put the horse in here. You're just going to see a wagon. And, and he gets the perspective on it, right? Drawing a wagon wheel, I don't know if either of you guys know this. It's a huge pain in the ass. And he puts 2 in there. And he puts it in perspective. I mean, it's just a gorgeous panel. He's amazing. So lucky and so happy to be working with him.
And many artists many artists famously hate drawing horses. So you have to have an artist into drawing horses for a series.
Well, that's the problem with this series. There's going to be a lot of horses. As I said, I love them, and Valerio obviously loves to draw them as well. I mean, loves horses and loves to draw them as well. The second issue, there's some shots that are, man.
So you originally envisioned this series as a mini series. You said you retooled it for Image. So do you have an idea of how long this series could potentially go on for?
I have 15 issues in mind right now. I don't know though. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that guy getting his head blown open. Sorry, I'm just trying to be funny here, and
Good. I told you to be yourself.
Well, right, but I mean, like a lot of people might think but people make jokes about Lincoln's assassination now. This should be safe, especially since this guy never existed. He's just a drawing.
I think we're far enough away from Lincoln's assassination that there could probably be jokes about it.
Oh yeah, there are. Believe me.
So, were there any particular Civil War movies or books that really influenced you as I know you talked about some of the nonfiction stuff you looked into, like some of the letters, but any movies or fiction novels about this era or TV shows from back in the day that influenced you?
F Troop. No, I'm kidding. You probably don't even know what F. You know what F Troop is.
I do. Yeah, I love it.
No, I have been by and large disappointed by Civil War movies and TV shows. So I wouldn't say that anyone. I'm sure that Glory probably had an impact on me. That's
a great movie.
Yeah, but by and large, I don't really. I'm not impressed by them, and I'm sure they made some kind of impact on me. I'm sure. I don't want to say that there's no influence at all, but I'm unaware of any influence.
I left this panel up because I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. How many artists are going to say, "Yeah, I'll draw 60 people fighting"? Sure. Let me do it. Let me do it. Yeah, sure.
I was really excited about this series because I really loved studying the Civil War when I was younger. I used to love reading the book Killer Angels by Michael Shara, I believe his name was, when I was younger. I used to love just that era of history. So I'm really excited to see that actually represented in comics, because I can't think of any other comics off the top of my head that are set in this era.
I mean, back before you were born, there were. What's that?
People are getting killed left and right here.
Yeah, well, it's the Civil War, man. No matter who gets killed, he's an American. You know?
There's
some perspective on that gun.
Another great panel. Great perspective on the gun, but the next panel, oh my God. The series of books by Bruce Catton, including what is it? Swift and Terrible Sword. It's nonfiction, but that was one of my early exposures to learning about the Civil War as something other than just spectacle, But there aren't really. I mean, there were comics back in the 60s that were occasionally set in the Civil War, but for the most part, even then, they were, like Our Army at War was set in World War II. That was the go-to war. Oh man, look at that. There's Dave. Man, we dropped all the color out of this panel because it is going to sing if we do that. Oh, gorgeous! My God.
Yeah, and almost all Westerns, if they're going to be set around, it's always after the Civil War. It's never really during the Civil War. So it's interesting to see this time period actually portrayed in comics. And like you said, I'm sure they happened before I was born, but in recent years, I haven't seen one, or I can't think of any.
Yeah, well, I don't even think there were any regular comics set, like monthly set in the Civil War. There were just occasional stories that would appear in one of those titles.
Look at that panel.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not go any further. I don't want to spoil the ending for these guys.
Okay. Stop right there with the guy with his face shot up.
His eye hanging out.
Yeah.
That's this is just Valerio is just. I didn't tell him this enough while we were working on it, because I have to edit this book too, which means get it done. Do a good job, but get it done. And the stuff comes in. I was like, "This is great, thank you," and I move on. But I gotta send him an email today to tell him just how gorgeous, and Dave, to tell him just how gorgeous that first issue is and what a great job he's been doing all along, you know.
So
that's the dynamic on Image. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to finish that off. The dynamic on Image is if you're writing a book, and I suppose this could be true of an artist, if you know that artist wanted to take this up, you have to edit the book as well. They're starting to use editors now, but I edited Rumble myself, which was a nightmare. And I'm editing this, which is also a nightmare, but I'm happy to do it. It's a fun part of the job, but having to write and edit, it's difficult. So just wanted viewers to understand that dynamic. That's why I mentioned that.
Well, what extra tasks do you have to pick up when you're editing your own book? Like, what does that look like?
Mostly, to be fair, and I know, Jess, you had a question, so please don't forget it. Mostly, you're scheduling the artist and editing like the artist's work. Like, you know, the artist will send you thumbnails, and you'll be like, you know, this doesn't work quite as well as I had hoped, or this is great. You know, you did a better job than I expected on this. You know, but you want to do that at a very early stage. You know, you want to see the thumbnails. So that's the thing. I insist on thumbnails to make it easier on the artist, because otherwise I'm going to be making decisions too late for the artist to easily fix, you know. But editing and, you know, scheduling the letterer and working with the letterer, but editing myself as a writer is really important. And unfortunately, for the letterer especially, a lot of my editing of my dialogue comes after I've seen the art. It's the nature of the animal. Ideally, I get a really long time to write my script, because I would prefer to be able to have someone edit my script, you know, so that I can make changes in panel descriptions and stuff, so that the artist gets the best script possible. But I take as long as I can possibly take to write the script without impacting the artist's or the colorist's or the letterer's schedule, to make sure that I have all the options to take a really hard look at the panel descriptions and make sure that all the visuals are exactly the best that they can be, that I'm providing for the artist, I should say, the visual descriptions. So it's a pain. That's why I mean it's a pain in the ass, because who's good at that? You know, who's good at seeing outside of his or her own head? Who's good at that? Not me.
So it seems like you enjoy having a good editor in that position, as opposed to doing it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I would really like to have an editor edit my scripts. I'm happy to do the rest of it, honestly. And I love editing. I edited a book 2 years ago that was just a blast for me to edit, that I was just curating and editing, and I really, really loved it. You know, I like the idea of helping other people sort of get the best vision possible out of their work without making them do what they don't do, like without forcing them to do what's in my head, but saying, this is what you want to do. You can do it better if you do this. I love that. You know, sorry, you had a question, Jess.
I was going to go back to Rumble just to ask, since it's creator owned at Image, do you have, we are collected edition aficionados. I don't buy floppies anymore. I wait to buy it and trade, or the hardcover. Do you have any thoughts of releasing Rumble as a collection and a hardcover?
I'd like to, and James and I have talked about it. I don't know what Image's plans would be for that. I don't know if they're interested in doing it or not. But I'd like to, but I don't know how that's going to work out.
Oh, okay. It's not just you saying I would like to do a hardcover. Image has to have their own buy-in on it too.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, whoever's going to publish it, you know, you gotta pitch it to them. You know, we've talked a little bit about it, but because James has been so busy on his book and I've been so busy on this and Rumble for the longest time there, I really haven't gotten a chance to talk to Image about it seriously. I don't know that they're interested in doing it. I think no one. Let's put it this way: no one from Image has reached out to us about doing it.
I know I would like to have one.
So would I. I wanted to do a big like for the first issue anyway, a big like because they did this for I think Tokyo Ghost, maybe a few other books, like a big just shot directly from the art so people can see James's raw inks. But that.
But I mean, I still enjoy the trades. Like I think you guys put a lot of thought into these trade paperbacks, like the back and all the different variant covers you have.
Yeah, Richard Corbin's blurb on that one right there that you're holding in your hand.
Oh yeah. What a loss!
I gotta tell you, man, I had a hard on for a week after that.
What a big loss that was, though.
Oh, you have no idea, dude. He was such a sweet guy. You have no idea. And he had so many ideas that he still was working on. Still breaks me out, really. I mean, it's.
Can you tell us any writers? We've heard some of the illustrators that you are fond of. Are there any other writers out there that you particularly care for?
Comics writers?
Yeah.
I don't. I think like the best writers, and this is ironic because of what I do. The best writers are the cartoonists, which is to say, they write and draw. And Eric Powell. I mean, God, what a good writer he is.
His art is amazing.
Yeah, but he's just as good a writer.
Yeah,
absolutely, just as good.
I think Hillbilly is the first 3 trades of Hillbilly are some of my favorite Eric Powell stuff.
Really, even better than the Goon. I should read.
Not better than the Goon, but I still love.
Oh, okay, because the Goon is a triumph.
A very underrated book that he did was Big Man's Plans. About
but someone else wrote that, right?
I think he wrote it. I can't remember, but that was an
I have it right here. I'll walk off screen.
I could be wrong. I know he did the art, but I can't. But that was such an underrated book that I think more people need to know about because that was a fantastic crime story.
See, I never read it because I was under the impression that he didn't write it. I haven't even read Hillbilly yet, but the Goon is just amazing. Yeah, well, I mean, even if he didn't write it, that doesn't mean it's not worth reading. That just means like I really like Eric's stuff, and I'll read it, if I get a chance to. And I got a chance to enjoy
that pure vision of one artist and one writer, just like working together by himself.
Yeah, I mean that's what really comics was more or less invented for. Again, it's ironic because of what I do, but Jack Cole, the greatest cartoonist ever, he wrote and drew Plastic Man and the early and late Midnight stuff for Smash Comics. That stuff is so brilliant. Just looking at it, it's a clinic in not only visual storytelling, but in the storytelling of writing. Even though the stories are stupid, that's all the more reason. Not the Plastic Man stories, but and not even the later Midnight stories. But some of the stories are just goofy stories. But he tells them with such great style and obviously talent and panache, work really, really well. And Charles Schulz, the greatest American artist of the second half of the 20th century. And I say that without reservation, better than any other painter or anything else, able to distill complex ideas into 3 or 4 panels daily and reach 50, 100 million people and that have them understand it, an accessible artist. And that's because he had a unity of vision and voice.
Did he ever take a day off?
Charlie Schulz?
Yeah.
No, he had a very good run health-wise till the end. And when his daughter got kidnapped, he still kept doing it. But I worked at United Features, United Media, and Sparky's stuff would come in, and the stuff comes in well in advance. So when his daughter got kidnapped, unless it lasted 2 months, he wasn't going to miss a day. I wasn't working there when his daughter got kidnapped. I was working there much later. But
did you know about that, Jess?
I didn't, and I'm a huge Charles Schulz fan. I never knew that.
I'll look it up.
Big Bad Plans is written by Eric Powell and Tim.
Oh, yeah. So Tim co-wrote it. Okay.
And it's great. I agree that this is underrated. It is great.
I didn't hear about it until Jess reviewed it on his channel a couple of years ago, and I didn't hear anybody else talk about it. And it's fantastic.
All right, I'll check it out. By the way, it was a failed kidnapping, just like with Princess Anne. It was a failed kidnapping, but still, that's got to rally you, man.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Can't imagine that. But Jess, you used to be pen pals with Charles Schultz, didn't you?
I still have my letters from when I was 8 years old. I don't know how I got his address. I was living in California at the time, and he would write me back. And we had a couple year run. I have some of them still, where it would be. It was like from 8 until I was 10, and I look back at him now, and I'm like so embarrassed by the questions I asked him.
Why? You were 8.
But I look back at it, and he had a thing with Mad Magazine where they'd go back and forth and tease each other. Like he'd have Alfred E. Newman in a strip, and they would, satire on Peanuts or something. And I was a big Mad Magazine collector, and I wrote him one time, and he wrote me back, and I asked him if his son would be willing to sell his Mad magazines. And he said, and I just wondered why would I ask him that? There's all these questions I could have asked him as a 10-year-old. Why would I ask him if his son wanted to sell me his Mad magazines?
Why weren't you more insightful as a 10-year-old?
Yeah, really, dude. Why weren't you asking about which tools he used? What's the matter with you? Stop beating yourself up over this shit. You learned the greatest lesson you could learn from 8 to 10 is that Sparky was a sweetheart. He was a sweetheart. He wrote back to you. Imagine how many cartoonists never bother to do that. They'll send you back a signed print, which is nice enough. Don't get me wrong. It's not like that's nothing, but he was a total sweetheart. If you've heard one of the last interviews he ever did that he did with Gary Groth at Fantagraphics, it's unbelievable. I mean, he talks about being a secular humanist, about essentially not being so adamant about his more religious upbringings or leanings, because he's looking for kindness in the world. He was a genius, and I don't say that about too many people.
No, you are 100% right.
Yeah, both him and Bill Watterson. It's hard to argue against that. Yeah,
it's easier for me to say that. I mean, there's no question that Bill Watterson is brilliant, but I reserve genius for very, very, very few, and I'd have to do a deeper dive on Watterson. So many things that I could point to in Peanuts over the years that he did with such a light touch, like he never hammered anything home. And when he talks about some of those things in that interview, I highly recommend hunting it up. When he talks about, I think it was published in issue 200 of the Comics Journal, you realize just how much restraint, professional restraint, he kept himself under to produce these sublime as well as beautiful comic strips. Just amazing.
I mean, he did a 50-year uninterrupted run.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, he never had. I mean, there 7 days a week there was always a Peanuts for 50 years.
Yeah, unlike Hank Ketchum, never used an assistant, never used a gag writer. Towards the end, was it his daughter or was it an assistant that did the lettering, and that's it. Now, is every single Peanuts strip genius? No. Are some of them pretty lame? Sure. 50 fucking years, man.
Yep.
7 days a week is that long, you're going to have ones that aren't going to be that great.
Yeah. And the first 10 years is an uninterrupted run of just pure genius. Pure genius.
Yeah.
Yeah. Able to reach so many people with these complex ideas just by distilling them down. It blows my mind, and distilling the art down. I mean, Alex Toth's got nothing on Charles Schultz.
Well, you respect cartoonists and artists who also write. Did you ever try to draw your own stuff, or was that never in the cards for you?
Well, I'm a frustrated artist from much earlier on. I have a Patreon page, and I found this script of an unpublished Mask story. And I think I was like, you know what? I'll scan the pages to the story and I'll post them. But as I pulled the pages apart, I found this these two panels that I drew out for Doug Mahnke. Can you imagine the arrogance of this? That I drew out for Doug Mahnke just to help him understand the motion. I wanted these two side-by-side panels where a character is smashing a character on one wall and then the other smashing the other wall. I like to do that a lot to give the storyteller an opportunity to use the page, the artist, I should say, to use the page as a storytelling tool. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to scan this. I'm not going to scan this. I know a man's got to know his limitations. And I got like fair to middling as an artist, but only with a lot of hard work, which means I never could have produced, 8 pages even a month of work that I thought was professional quality. So,
well, I will read the Comic Journal interview with Charles Schulz if you'll give Hillbilly a try.
I absolutely will give it a try. I just haven't gotten around to it. Comic creators, they don't have as much money as you think they do. And with the pandemic, I'm not going to comic shops, and I hate to order on Amazon, but I'll do that. I know the comic creators still get the money, but the comic shops don't. And by the way, that Sparky interview, you can, I don't know if you can still find it online, but the Comics Journal at one time posted the audio online. Oh. And I recommend getting that, because just listening to him talk and listening to him essentially without saying anything like negative at all, embarrassing the shit out of Gary Groth. It's really funny. Really, really funny. But being totally kind, talking about things, where Gary is, you need the context of Gary's full career to understand how Gary must feel right at that moment when Schulz says something. It's great stuff. I highly recommend finding the audio if you can.
Well, I've heard about this interview, and I couldn't think of two more opposite people in my mind to do an interview with. I'm like, Charles Schulz did an interview with Gary Groth.
Yeah. Wow. Tell me about it, brother. Tell me about it. But for that very reason, it's such a great interview. And Sparky is, as always, just as sweet as can be. He was such a great guy. Kind to everybody that he worked with.
Well, since we're kind of talking about the past of the comics industry, and we're going through a difficult time, obviously, right now, what are your thoughts on where the industry is right now and how you'd like to see it evolve and continue as we come out of the pandemic, hopefully sometime this year? Yeah, cross our fingers, yeah.
Obviously right now it's not a great time for the comics industry. I know DC has seen some real problems that, as far as I can tell, are unrelated. At least, the proximate, I don't know, approximately it's unrelated to the pandemic. And certainly, it seems unrelated, I should say. And certainly, the actual cause of what is going on at DC right now, I don't see how it possibly could be related to the pandemic. It doesn't bode well for the future of comics at DC, I think. I don't know how that's going to work out. I mean, they've got a lot of great characters. It'd be great if they can, continue to produce great work, but I'm worried about it. That's all I can tell you. But going forward, provided, as you say, we can come out of the pandemic, and even if we can't, a lot of comics, they're not in comic shops, they're online. And a lot of creators are, I hope, using this time to create more online comics and reach people through a variety of platforms like Patreon, or I'm sure there are others of which I am unaware. But and the best part about that is just be real, speak your own voice. Don't try to sell this comic, just try to reach people, and you can reach them this way much more easily than you could ever reach them on a newsstand or a comic book shop. Just try to reach people, and trust me, if you're authentic and you're doing the best work you can, I mean, don't blow it off. Don't just phone it in and say, "Fuck it, I just want to do something for the sake of doing something." But if you really have something to say, this is the time to say it. And if you really have something to show, this is the time to show it. people are stuck inside, man. So I hope a lot of creators are exploiting this opportunity to create work that's very personal to them and find their audience. And I hope they find a big enough audience that they can continue to do it. That is what I feel is most promising about comics, not as an industry, but as a medium, is an opportunity to really create personal work, or work that's important to you personally, you know, and not worry about whether or not there's enough appearances of Wolverine in it, you know.
It's never been more easy. It's never been easier for a writer to find an artist to work with, because you can find them online.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing this for years, as I was telling you guys earlier. I've been doing this for years, reaching out to. I've been using the internet in that regard for years, and it's been really successful for me. I got to work with some of the best collaborators ever that I've worked with, and I've worked with some greats. But in the last 10 years on the internet, 12 years, let's say, I've gotten the opportunity to work with people that I've had the most successful and happiest collaborations with, and I hope I have an opportunity to continue to do that. Does that answer the question? Or
yeah, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, Jess, do you have any other questions for John before we wrap up with some of our quick lightning round questions?
No, I have thoroughly enjoyed this interview.
Really? Because, man, I talk a lot.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I said I talk a lot. I can really talk people's ears off.
No, that's we love to sit back and let the creator say what's on their mind. So this has been perfect, and I think you've just been a very interesting guest, and I really enjoyed this interview a lot.
Wow, I'm very happy to hear that. I know I can be discursive in my speaking patterns and even the way I answer direct questions, but
that is, I mean, I want you to be you, and that's that.
You got that.
I think that's great, because we talked about your comics, and we talked about Charles Schultz, and we talked about, you know, your upcoming comic, and we covered a wide range of things, and people like it when you don't just give a canned answer, or just they like it when you extrapolate and you'll go off on a tangent that takes you somewhere really interesting. And
I can only hope it's interesting. Let me just please say, well, thank you. Let me please just say one thing before the lightning round questions, or if this is the wrap up. I just want to say one thing. I wrote 2 Moons for Richard Corbin, and I'm really sad that he's not here to see it.
Oh,
he lives in Kansas. I mean, he grew up on either back and forth on the Kansas-Missouri border, but he was living in Kansas at the end of his life, in a I believe a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri. And it was a little tribute to him, because there's nobody in comics who's more important to me of my career, Richard Corbin. I discovered the broad scope of comics by discovering his work, and he gave me everything. He was a very kind person.
That's great to hear. I'm sorry that he didn't get to see it.
Yeah, me too. I expected him to live until at least 90. You know, John Severin, that guy was eating beef brisket every night, and he made it to 90. I expected Corbin. You know, he's working out every day. You know, I expected him to make it to at least 90, and that's so sad. I mean, 80 is a good age, but yeah.
Well, it's still a great tribute to him, even though he can't see it himself.
Yeah, well, it's the best I could make it. You know, I hope it's important to somebody.
I greatly enjoyed it. I'm not just saying that because you're here. I wouldn't say anything if I didn't. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, so we always wrap up our interviews with some quick lightning round questions. Jess and I are big into listening to music as we read and do other things. Whenever you write, do you just kind of sit in silence, or will you have music in the background? If so, what kind of music do you listen to?
I have to do it in silence.
Okay.
I however bad or good I am, I can't concentrate unless I have relative silence. Like if my wife's playing something in the other room, that's fine. But
What kind of music do you listen to on your free time?
Oh, all kinds. I mean, I don't really have all kinds. Jazz, country blues, synth pop, not country western since 1980, but country western before, all kinds, really. I mean, there's nothing that I don't listen to, as long as it's good.
Yeah.
And so you talked about your love of Eric Powell. Are there any other comics right now that you've been reading that you've enjoyed? I used to you haven't been reading as much as you used to, but anything that our viewers should be looking out for that you've enjoyed?
Well, there's something new coming from Brandon Graham, and I find his writing and his art and his coloring, especially, to be really what's the word I'm looking for? Engaging. Well, yeah, certainly he did that, but engaging. Farrell, Dalrymple, they both live right here. Farrell, I've said this before, I'll say it again. He's probably the best draftsman in comics, and his writing is definitely very different. I love his stuff. Obviously, Eric Powell, James Herron. I'm really looking forward to seeing his book come out. I've gotten to see the first couple issues, and I'm really eager to see what it looks like colored up and lettered up. And I think he's a better writer than some people. I don't know if anybody gives him any credit for being a writer, because he really hasn't done any besides this. But he's. I'll be interested to see what people say when they read his stuff and they understand his voice. Let me see. Anybody else producing stuff? Currently now. I'm sure there's a lot of guys, a lot of artists that I'm interested in, but I can't think of any writers other than the ones I mentioned offhand that sort of compel me to bring me to a book. But that's largely because I haven't done much comics reading in the last year.
Well, I'm sure writing comics, it makes you not want to read comics as much because you're working all day, and so you want to relax doing something else.
Yeah, generally speaking, all the reading I do becomes research. And which kind of sucks. So I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot. I am reading Comanche Moon right now by Larry McMurtry. It's not nearly as good as Lonesome Dove, but and I'm reading it very, very slowly. But it's diverting enough. But for serious reading, I gravitate towards the classics like Melville and Twain. And Annie Proulx. Annie Proulx can be repetitive, but her best work is, Jesus, amazing.
And before we got started with the show, you said you're not much of a collector, but you had those Godzillas behind you that we were admiring before the show started.
Yeah, that's from, wait, I should probably take the hat off of the Shogun. As you can see, I hang. Where can I go? I hang my scarf and my hat on my Dueling Godzillas. The scarf is okay on the sticky guy over here because the scarf's usually tucked in my jacket, but the hat is going to get wet here in Oregon, so I put the hat on the harder plastic guy. So, and then as I was saying earlier, St. Francis is there as the referee. keep them from any low blows. So yeah, if you don't like Godzilla, I won't go so far as to say if you don't love Godzilla, even though that's what I think. But if you don't like Godzilla, there's something wrong with you.
Well, Jeff, you just bought a bunch of Godzilla comics, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I just picked up like 3 books.
The stuff from the 70s and 80s, or the more recent stuff from Dark Horse?
I think it's some of the more recent stuff.
Right. Hey, whatever. As long as you're fucking supporting Godzilla and keeping him out there in the world, I'm all for it.
Wasn't there a King Kong Godzilla movie coming out sometime?
Fuck that shit.
I didn't watch. I didn't like the newest King. Most recent Godzilla movies. 1998. I remember seeing that movie in theaters, and
I don't tell you my problems, dude. No, man. Godzilla is a guy in a costume stomping around toy buildings. That's Godzilla with that big tail. Shin Godzilla, even though it's all CGI, Shin Godzilla, they get it. They understand. They figured out what's important about Godzilla. That Godzilla works with that big tail being a kind of entity of its own. You know, that's Godzilla. You can't, man, that's Godzilla. Sorry. I mean, look, I'll accept any form of Godzilla in the world, but if and I know tastes have changed and even the zeitgeist has changed, but if you can't appreciate the sheer joy of some poor motherfucker losing 6 pounds a day inside that Godzilla suit, stomping around a village for the enjoyment of a bunch of kids in Japan and in America, then you have no soul. You have no heart. You have no place in society. You should live up in a mountain.
I'm going to make sure our friend Gio watches this interview. He loves Godzilla.
Of course he does. And I'm a huge King Kong fan, but not any King Kong since the 1933 King Kong, because it's just so much more charming than all the rest of the other King Kongs. The other King Kongs don't understand it. And, Kong of Kong Island, they don't get it. They don't understand it. They don't understand and the thing is, Godzilla can go on forever, but King Kong, really, there was just one King Kong. You can't make a sequel. You can't remake King Kong because it was such a product of its time. It was made in 1933. It was set in 1933. And the charmingness of their general ignorance of prehistoric life is all there up on the screen, These big brontosauruses trying to eat people, whatever. Who gives a shit, man, right? You can't do that anymore because kids know too much. It just doesn't work anymore. Just like, like trying to do Sherlock. No, that doesn't work. I won't bring this. Sorry, not going to say that. If you can edit that out, edit that out. You can't redo Huck Finn. It doesn't work. You can't redo Moby Dick. You can't even make Moby Dick into a fucking movie. And you can't do that with Huck Finn either, because there's so much internal monologue that explicates everything about what the books are actually about. It doesn't work in a movie. So King Kong is like that. I'm not saying King Kong is Moby Dick, but in a way. You can't remake Citizen Kane. You can't make a sequel. It's of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're in a time where everybody wants to reboot everything and redo old IP. So, unfortunately,
yeah. Well, I know, and it's what made those things great. They can do whatever they want to make money. All right, that's fine. But what makes King Kong and Citizen Kane and Moby Dick and Huckleberry Finn and The Mysterious Stranger and so much else that Mark Twain wrote great can't be reproduced. So they are what they are, and whatever they're doing now is not what they profess to be. And I insist that's what makes Godzilla great. Both the original Godzilla movie from '54, which is chilling at times. It really is. I mean, if you've seen the movie even recently, you can't just dismiss it. Like when he's walking through Tokyo and there's all that fire behind him and there's this ponderousness to the silhouette of this great creature destroying everything. It works so well. But then later when he's goofy and he's got this big floppy tail, that works too. What makes those Godzilla movies great can't be really reproduced anymore. The Japanese are probably going to get the closest to doing that because after all, it's theirs as anybody else. Sorry, man, you didn't expect me to go off like that.
No, we're perfectly fine with tangents.
This is the lightning round, and I've given you a whole goddamn supercell.
Well, thank you so much, John. We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
We really do.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me give free rein to my id. And I do appreciate your interest, and I hope this reaches people who may be interested in seeing Two Moons or anything else I've ever done, and may also be interested in me giving greater explanations as the stuff I've done in the past. I hope it reaches those people and not the people who are going to be pissed off by it.
So you mentioned your Patreon. Where else can people find you online?
What the hell is it? I mean, you know, what am I going to say? Hold on a second. It's what the hell is it? Let's go here. It's patreon.com/Arcudi Stories. All one word, Arcudi Stories, plural, Arcudi Stories.
I know I follow you on Instagram as well. I know you have an Instagram page.
Ishmahab, ISHMAHAB, which is the combination of Ishmael and Ahab from Moby Dick.
Right. So not only look for Two Moods next month.
Yeah, late February. Rumble in all of its incarnations. My misgivings about what I did notwithstanding, David did a great job. They're good comics. It's just my own personal mea culpa. It's the Catholic upbringing. What can I tell you?
So go out and get all 6 trades. Me and Jess.
Absolutely. Especially, even if you're a James Aaron fan, that last trade has James Aaron and Andrew McLean art in it, as long as a few other guys. So, for some reason, I don't think they'll be interested in my writing. I wrote them all, so buy them because I'm the best, or something.
Thank you so much. This has been great, and I look forward to talking to you again, maybe after a few issues of Two Moods has been out. And
that'd be great.
We can talk about that. You were a great guest, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And to the audience, please support this gentleman's work. It's awesome. Rumble is great. And I'm looking forward to Two Moods. And I want to read the crime comics that Taylor talked about. And this has been John Arcudi with us. And on behalf of Taylor and myself and John, thank you for watching. Please feel free to subscribe, leave a like, and leave a comment. And as always, peace and love, peace and love.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, OmniDog. Thanks, Taylor. I really appreciate it. Everybody, hope you have a good day.